In my most recent video on the predatory fungus species called the Ascomoid, I had some interest in other giant and predatory fungus species one can find in the Forgotten Realms. Well, there are quite a few, including varieties that tend to be found on all kinds of fantasy worlds, spontaneously evolving the same form and function to suit a particular environment and prey type. I have been greatly assisted in this task by a single remarkable tome of invaluable knowledge, and the good news is that it is currently available to you on Earth, of all places. If you head to the DM's Guild online, type Frendi Frokthu's Big Book of Fungus and look for this cover image. It is the complete and perfect guide to fungi and the realms. No, not entirely, but it's a damn sight better than Grott's Guide to Rot Plants or Fuller's Manuscript of Subterranean Flora, neither of which can be found on the DM's Guild anyway. Frendi packs a lot into the book that is not much of concern to me, such as new player character options, new spells and such, but I am far more interested in the fungal creatures and their ecological information without further preamble. First up, the Basidiron. Some call them stilt caps or swamp chokers. They love to hide among the swamp trees that grow many long roots close to the surface, where the Basidiron can blend in almost perfectly. They can also be found in very humid jungles, dark subtropical forests, and wet underground environments, where they continuously adapt to hide in plain sight, remaining completely motionless until it's time to strike. Basidorons are multi-stemmed fungoid monsters with woody, leathery bodies of orange colour and upper portions looking much like reversed umbrellas, with interior as a sooty black. In combat, the fungoid monsters will lash forward with their cone-shaped caps. A successful hit inflicts a bludgeoning hit and starts to choke a victim who can't avoid inhaling, resulting clogging spores in the respiratory tract. A victim will smother from these growths eventually unless a cure disease spell or other effect is applied to them. When standing around doing nothing, the Basidiron can fill a 30-foot or 9-meter area with their hallucinatory spores. These spores form an invisible cloud 30 feet around the fungus and can inflict quite severe hallucinations. If the character fails to avoid the spores, roll an 8-sided die. If you roll a 1, they will believe they are in a swamp and will strip off their armor to avoid sinking. On a 2, they will believe spiders are attacking them and will flail at imaginary spiders on the floor all around them. On a 3, they believe they've shrunk down in size to tiny proportions and they will scream at their allies to help them. On a 4, they believe objects they are holding are randomly turning into deadly vipers. And on a 5, they will firmly believe they are suffocating, causing them to run around in panic. And 6, they will believe everyone else is horribly diseased and will try to run away from them. On a 7, they will feel like their body is melting and will simply clutch themselves and scream, trying to hold together. And on a roll of 8, they will believe they have a giant bloated leech attached to their back, draining their blood unless they can somehow get it off. All of these were part of the original monster description of the Basidiron, written by Gary Gygax for Dragon Magazine number 68. The fungus has a simple follow-up move. If it detects that any creature around it has succumbed to the hallucinatory spores, it moves adjacent to the victim and beats the bloody hell out of them with its heavy wooden leg stalks until the victim stops twitching entirely and becomes another pile of nutrients, adding to the general stench of the fungus grotto. As a plant-like creature, the majority of fungus creatures can never be mind-controlled, frightened, poisoned, knocked unconscious or blinded. It's very rare that they have a true sense of sight. They typically sense their environment through vibrations, and we call this blind sight in Dungeons & Dragons. Basidorons are joined by the Phycomid. These creatures, with their algae-like appearance, represent a stark contrast to the more familiar fungal forms one might expect to see in the dark corners of the Forgotten Realms. Imagine coming across what appears to be a mere pile of decomposing, milky-coloured matter. It seems harmless, perhaps even pitiable in its inert state, but within the seemingly innocuous mass lies a deadly predator. The Phycomids are not your typical fungoid monsters. They possess an unusual method of attack that evolves from the extrusion of a tube through which they discharge a highly alkaline fluid. This substance is not merely corrosive, it's a harbinger of much more gruesome fate. The globules of alkaline fluid, capable of being projected to a distance of 7 to 12 feet, are not only dangerous due to their highly caustic nature, but also because they can infect a victim, turning them into a breeding ground for new Phycomids. These creatures are equipped with specialized sensory organs clustered around their form, allowing them to detect heat, sound, and vibration. This sensory adaptation makes them formidable hunters, capable of sensing and tracking prey even in the absence of conventional sight. When a Ficomid attack connects, the immediate danger is the alkaline damage, which is formidable in its own right. However, the true horror is when they find that they failed to resist the poison, and within mere moments the site of the attack sprouts mushroom-like growths, a chilling visual marker of the impending doom, as these growths are not slow in their proliferation. Within 5 to 8 rounds, they inflict significant damage, and the process of transformation accelerates. The victim's body becomes a fertile ground for these growths, which rapidly spread, consuming the host from within, and in less than an hour, what was once a living creature becomes a new, blubbery Ficomid, a stark reminder of the circle of life and death that governs the fungal kingdom. In terms of defenses, Ficomids share some characteristics with their fungal kin. They are impervious to mental control, obviously, and they're also resistant to fire and save against all fire-based attacks with advantage, which can mean that they are one of the few fungal creatures that remain in cases where underground groves or rotted out forests have been deliberately immolated by other races. It's a desperate measure, though, as fungal forests are so rich in resources in so many other ways. There are species such as barrel stalk or ripplebark that can be used as wood or food. There are some good writing materials, and some are better suited for making clothing or rope. Fungus provides the bulk of underground medicines, and it's not unusual. Well, let's not forget that mushrooms are they're basically flowers, right? So they can be very decorative, exotic things of beauty that can be kept for their artistic value alone. Fungus as a template can better to any other monster, plant, and animal species, where the fungus has completely taken over the original organism. For example, you can have shambling mounds that are now infested with brown, russet, or yellow mold, gaining the special qualities of those types of mold. To make it even more confusing, myconids, the underground's most common fungus people, can also be infected with another type of predatory fungus and start wandering around without a brain, just a mobile spore factory. Then you have the vegipygmies and the thornies, which are fungus, plant hybrid creatures with a life cycle built around the russet mold. Fetid fungus is a particularly gross critter. It's a festering blob of lichen growing over a mound of decomposition that uses the chemical breakdown to produce gas it directs as jets of gas to fling itself onto victims, to engulf them, and to start breaking them down with potent acid. Just slashing or beating the thing will splash acid all over the place, and shooting them with arrows seems to do nothing. But they can burn pretty quickly and can't move very fast or very far, and the stench of them travels further than the fetid fungus probably ever will. Some fungus uses gas not just to flop around and hopefully grab somebody. The gas spore fills a round cavity and floats through the air, looking to most wary dungeon delvers like the infamous Beholder monster, with its many eye stalks capable of firing beams of magical energy. Gas spores are harmless unless burst and spreading disease spores over a 20-foot area. I have talked about myconids before. Just be warned that some colonies of the ordinarily peaceful fungus people can turn into very dangerous cults of the Queen of Rot, and a sure sign is erratic and agitated movements in the myconids. Particularly the huge sovereign will seem to be jiggling and dancing a twisted kind of freaky belly dance, while its giant cap is tilted sideways like it's listening to something singing an irresistible song. They are spooky. Stay away from them or you will end up as fertilizer for its thousands of babies. At least the myconids and all the other fungus I've mentioned so far have been more or less normal terrestrial kind of forms of life. Well, except the vegipygmies, which came from a crash-landed spaceship. But they came from some other world in a normal universe. The following fungus predators do not. First, the Rickorazzle. This entity, hailing from the enigmatic and chaotic depths of the elemental plane of Earth, is a specialist in deception and subterfuge, a master of masquerade and manipulation. The Rickorazzle utilizes its uncanny ability to adapt and adopt the forms of charismatic individuals, weaving complex webs of deceit among the unsuspecting denizens of the material plane. It excels in the insidious craft of cult formation, luring individuals into the worship of fabricated deities, only to twist these nascent beliefs towards the veneration of malevolent forces. Now, of course, it doesn't have to be humanoids that this thing is infiltrating. It can masquerade as any sort of a species. Already you can see how this habit alone would be massively alluring to fiendish creatures, having a cult all set up, ready-made, just waiting for them to step in, take control, and use for their own schemes. It's just perfect. But the Rikarazzle's guile is not limited to the beliefs of the gullible. It peddles cursed artifacts cloaked in the guise of beneficence and poses as a healer, only to inflict grievous maladies upon those who seek its aid. Through these underhanded tactics of evil, the Rikarazzle sows discord and despair at various levels at whatever society it finds itself in, delighting in the systematic downfall of those it deceives. It is a creature of rot, after all. It just has a much more refined and evolved appreciation for the rot of culture, society, personal conduct, as well as a nice meal of decaying flesh of its victims. The smiling leader, the esteemed hero, the wise and charismatic figure, under it lurks a monster in plain sight. In its true visage, the Rikarazzle is a creature of nightmares, a grotesque amalgamation of fungal horror and malevolent intelligence. Its form is a bulbous fungoid mass from which sprout numerous tendrils studded with cruel hooks. These tendrils serve the dual purpose of locomotion and manipulation, allowing the Rikarazzle to interact with its environment in a disturbing parody of humanoid functionality. Atop this monstrous body sits a head reminiscent of a ram's skull, complete with horns and a maw filled with fangs dripping with acidic saliva. The creature's eyes are, its eye sockets are filled with writhing fungal filaments, and the random growths that adorn its form only add to its eldritch appearance. This thing is a fungus demon of some kind, an alien predatory form of life that is driven by an unholy energy. In combat, the monster will reveal itself to unleash a frenzy of claws and fanged bites, taking maximum advantage of how horrific it appears and stunning the effect it has on those unprepared for it. It gets as many attacks as it can land in the first round of combat and will back off, going into a defensive posture or seeking out other victims as the secondary threat of its attacks sprout in the body and take hold of the victims. Yep, you guessed it, a spreading fungal growth that will course through their body and swell the flesh, bursting into plumes of fungal growth that slows down and eventually immobilizes the victim and then slowly devours them alive. The Rikarazzle's arsenal of abilities is further augmented by spell-like capabilities, allowing it to manipulate its environment and the adversaries with a sinister finesse. From altering its form to casting shadows of darkness, entangling roots, or mirroring images of itself, the Rikarazzle wields these powers with the intent to disorientate and dominate. But wait, there's more. Other monsters like the Rikarazzle suffer from being solitary, making them easier for groups of adventurers to take down. But the Rikarazzle has the ability to expel oozes, using them as living weapons that adhere to and consume its foes. This, coupled with its powers of evasion and slowly building threat of its fungus infection, makes any fight with it a harrowing experience as it's spitting oozes over you. As well as all intelligent predators, expect the unexpected and never doubt that they are a threat, no matter how much they smile and reassure you. You can find the original listing for the Rikarazzle in the core monster manual for 3.5 edition TNT. Finally, another alien fungus for you today, the Phantom Fungus. The Phantom Fungus is another sneaky master of stealth and subterfuge, its presence often betrayed only by the soft squelching sounds of its movement and an unmistakable musty odour. Should one manage to render this creature visible, they would behold a sight most peculiar. A mass of fungal matter, coloured in shades of brown or greenish-brown, perched atop 4 stumpy legs. Atop a body sits a cluster of nodules and its gaping maw filled with rows of serrated teeth, very ready to prepare your flesh for some rapid decomposition. What sets the Phantom Fungus apart from its kin is its innate and perpetual cloak of invisibility, akin to the effects of a greater invisibility spell. This trait allows it to stalk its prey unseen, attacking with the element of surprise firmly on its side. These fungi are creatures of solitude roaming the subterranean depths in search of sustenance. Despite their simplicity, phantom fungi do possess low-light vision, with their sensory nodules enabling them to navigate the Underdark. They're very opportunistic hunters, preferring to ambush solitary travelers or, when facing groups, to engage in more open spaces where they can utilize their mobility and invisibility to confound and wear down their prey. Variants of the phantom fungi exist in the lower dark, serving the druidic circle of the depths in the Underdark city of Fluvernilstra, also known as the Garden City of Great Berendon. quite a remarkable place with the greatest abundance of Underdark flora. It's like a massive tropical rainforest of fungus with a city built into it. Moreover, the Plane of Shadow hosts its own version, the Shadow Phantom Fungi, while the demonic realms, particularly Shidakla, the domain of Zugdmoy, the demon queen of fungi, harbour fiendish and half-fiend variants. And these infernal planes, the phantom fungi, serve as favoured minions, thriving in the warm, damp conditions and partaking in the eternal struggle against the oozes of Dublex's realm. There are many more predatory fungi, the violet fungus, the shrieker, the hedgehog shriekers of the Stormhorn caverns, to name just a few. They're just a few notable varieties from my journals and explorations. I'll have more about fungus in future videos, rest assured. My name is AJ Pickett. Thanks for listening, and as always, I'll be back with more for you very soon.